Welcome to the Tuesday edition of Juan's World, and I'm going to break away from my deconstructing Easter a little bit because we're out of Lent now, so I can cook some meat, and as it happens I have an ox tongue, not something that most people in the United States anyway are very familiar with. Maybe a little bit more in the United Kingdom, and certainly it's a deli meat that some people are used to, but more in the United Kingdom than in the United States. Anyway, I found this ox tongue, and so I'm going to prepare Basque ox tongue stew. Let's get it started. So this is how I'm starting the process of making the tongue stew. It's two parts. The first part is that I have to cook the tongue itself. You see the tongue here in the bottom of a large pot, which I've got filled up, not full, but pretty much covering the tongue with beef broth. And I've also got carrots, I've got some smashed up garlic, I've got some shallots, and over here I have just charred off a whole onion, which I'm going to put in there. That's the kind of thing that they do for Vietnamese pho. So I thought, okay, well, we'll do that for this. So this is the first step. I'm going to put it on a slow simmer and cook for 3 hours. Now, virtually the bulk of the cooking of this stew is just simmering, like 3 hours with the tongue here, and I managed to find a way to use the induction burner in such a way that I could keep it on a slow simmer as it does here, and this is kind of what it looks like after 3 hours. I can't really say much more than that. In the time it simmers, the tongue just gets more and more tender, and then what I needed to do was to take the tongue out and leave behind this rich broth that had been simmering with the onion, carrots, garlic, and some peppercorns, and a little bit of parsley I added as well. And then my next job is just simply to reduce it. Also not something that is tremendously entertaining on video. Just like boil and boil and boil. I needed to reduce it to about a third of its quantity so that it's very, very dense and rich in flavor. And now comes the actual making of the stew. The first thing is to make the sauce, and for that I needed to add about half again of the stock with canned tomatoes. And I added to that a julienne bell pepper. I prefer a green one, but I couldn't get one, so I had to use a red one. I like to have a mix of green and red. Kind of emulates in some ways the Basque flag, but I couldn't find the green, so I had to deal with red, and I added some leeks. And normally I would add potatoes, but I'm trying to cut down on carbs, so I didn't do that. And then again, it's just a matter of simmering, reducing. Usually takes somewhere between 40 minutes to an hour to get it to where it's thick. I don't want to add any thickening. I just want the sauce to be thick by itself. Meanwhile, here's the tongue. And the tongue really has two components. There's the like the basic tongue part that you can see in the mouth of a cow or an ox, and then there's the base, and the base is full of bones and cartilage and whatnot. So you have to be very careful to get the meat out of it. But mostly what I just did was I just took the tongue part and sliced it up, and then added it to the sauce and let it heat through. Done. That's Basque tongue stew. It's really not a spectator sport because it mostly just does itself, and every so often I have to go to the stove and adjust something and then let it do itself. So I would say it took me a total of 5 hours, and out of those 5 hours I maybe worked on the stew itself for about 10-15 minutes at the most. So that's tongue stew. That's one of my favorites, and I'm glad to make it when I can find a tongue. Can't get too much offal in Cambodia. Can't get tripe very often. Can't get kidneys very often. Can't get heart very often. Whenever I do, I buy them and I make something out of them. You can make this same stew with heart, and it's really scrumptious as well. And it takes the same amount of cooking to soften the heart, and then to make the sauce and so forth. And you can even use tripe. So it works for all of them. So that's my Basque stew recipe to begin our movement towards Pentecost. I hope you have a good week, and I will see you on Friday.